Hi, and welcome to another episode of Real Estate with Howard Drukarsh. For those that don't know me, I'm one of the co-founders, along with Arthur Bartram and Ron Petticord, of Canada's largest independent brokerage with 5,500 agents. I've also been a member of the Board of Directors of the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board, the Board of Directors of the Real Estate Council of Ontario, also known as RECO, which is the regulator for all registrants in the province of Ontario, and I sit on the board of the company I co-founded. If you'd like to know more about me, our first episode called Intro is about my journey, my ups and downs, and how I ended up where I am today. This is not your typical podcast, typical real estate podcast. We interview real estate agents, brokers, people in pre-construction. That could be developers, builders, people who market pre-construction, people who sell pre-construction. We also interview lawyers, finance people, media people, and people who are outside the real estate field, but just have really interesting stories. And in fact, all of our guests have the same life background. That is, they've had to overcome roadblocks, setbacks, challenges, failures, rejection, but they kept going in a trajectory that took them to success. And for that, they're very interesting guests. My own background is I was a real estate agent for 20 years. Then when I started this company with my partners, as we grew, I was managing our different branches. And for a few years, I was broker of record and president. And one of the things about real estate is the hiring of people. And over the time that I was active in the company, I hired over 1,000 people. The new people were fascinating to me because some of them just had such great energy. I knew they'd do well. And then the transferring agents were fascinating because here are people who joined well-known brands, better than ours, been around longer than ours, but joined us because they saw we were better value for them. So that's my background. But today, I'm really thrilled to have a guest that talks. I guess the thing about our relationship, it became an online relationship in a moment. My guest today is Sean McPeak. I met Sean in a clubhouse room 2 days ago, and here he is a guest on our podcast. I'm going to read some of Sean's accomplishments. First, the name Sean McPeak may not be as well known in Toronto, but it would be in the U.S. Sean is the founder of the McPeak Team, and he's at Serhant, period, as the company is known. So he's been in the business over 11 years, and he's worked on all kinds of globally recognized teams in the high-end luxury field. He now also he has sold over $500 million in real estate. He works on development of new property. He's had a successful track record of negotiating some of New York's priciest listings. Obviously, that's where he's situated. Prior to that, he was at a brokerage called Hallstatt and also one called Brown, Harris, and Stevens. He's been ranked in the top 10 and recently won awards for contributions to innovation for the company and the industry. He also has the RIS Media 2020 Trendsetter Award for the work in social media and influencing marketing. In a moment, we'll get back to one of the projects he did because it's fascinating by its name. He continues to innovate at Serhant. He and Ryan work on new development, on helping developers adapt to the changing landscape and how to market to it. And he's novel for his use of experimental marketing, social media, and digital channels to increase visibility and traffic. And that's our podcast. Good night, folks. Okay. Okay, so one of the things in here, Sean, is you influenced the dog influencer Rude Boy to star in a viral campaign that led to a sale of a luxury apartment. Tell all of our guests who have no idea what that means. What does it mean?
So we met a client at a dog cafe in New York City. So the first ever dog cafe called Boris and Horn is actually another client of mine. Is a first cafe where you could bring a dog inside because there's very strict health and hygiene codes here. So we met a woman and her Boston Terrier named Rude Boy. And Rude Boy had about 9,000 Instagram followers. And a lot of these dogs at this cafe happen to be dog influencers. But this one Rude Boy needed to sell his apartment and needed to move on. And the kind of genesis of this was we were doing an Instagram takeover for a former company, Hallstatt, and we kind of integrated a dog influencer to that. But then when we found out Rude Boy needed to move, we decided to use Rude Boy in the marketing. So we made a video about Rude Boy moving and also photographed Rude Boy in every single photograph we took of the apartment. And it wasn't a huge apartment. but the video ended up going viral. It had about 40,000 views within the first 3 weeks. And I did a presentation on the marketing plan at the leading real estate companies of the world's luxury portfolio seminar in Barcelona, Spain, in 2018. And it was a hit. We had used different types of influencers to sell real estate in Manhattan and Brooklyn before. Most notably, my partner, Katie Thurber, she sold 117 units in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, using mostly local influencers. So chefs, fashion people, kind of tech people, but more local influencers. And we've had luck just kind of cross-pollinating our brands with different influencers. And Rude Boy was kind of our first opportunity at that company to kind of set ourselves apart. And we sold a very difficult apartment to sell. There's a lot of problems, but the extra attention from that campaign helped that apartment and really helped with us getting new listings as well.
Good for you. I know Toronto real estate is nowhere near New York, I don't think. But what was the price of that one that you marketed?
That unit, believe it or not, was only $500,000.
Okay, so it was
it was small. I mean, even in Toronto, I think that would be a small unit.
500 in Toronto right now is generally a 1-bedroom with no parking, maybe with probably with no parking, 525, and it's in the downtown core, somewhere near the subway line. That's what 500 gets. But freehold has gone nuts here because people feel they want to get out of small units and interest rates are low, and the increase in value of homes outside the core has gone crazy. People want to get out for a lot of reasons.
So what I've understood about Toronto for several years is that it's been a very, very active, hot market, short supply,
right.
A lot of pre-construction sales
right.
Happening there for years now. Now it's even hotter somehow.
Yeah.
This apartment was a very small 1-bedroom, but we don't hold back for any property. And, we definitely went out of our way to kind of create something special for this, but we had a great collaborator and a great client, Rude Boy, the Boston Terrier.
Right.
And, the thing just took off, and we've been integrating social media into, social media influencers specifically into our marketing, for about 5 years, heavily. I mean, I first started marketing property on Instagram in 2012, 13.
Wow.
And it's really gotten legs now because it's really spread to all kind of age brackets. So it's become an invaluable tool for our marketing efforts.
Oh, great. I mean, the business has changed even, we talked about in the last 11 years. I mean, the last 2 years, the business has changed dramatically, right? And
yeah.
And the consumer has changed. Not what impresses them, but what gets their attention has changed. So the more innovative you can be, the better.
Yeah, and the consumer has a discriminating eye now. They look for the Pinterest style photos, that the architectural digest level kind of curation for your listings. If you don't have the right exposure, the right angles, the right staging in your listing photos now, it's like going to the grocery store and looking at like a can of soup with a dent in it or like a ripped label. You're just going to go to the next can of soup and get the one that doesn't look like it has damage. So even if even if the pricing is the same or may slightly better pricing, your media presentation could scare that buyer away. That's the main difference between when I started in real estate, almost 12 years ago, and now, is that back then you could have dark photos, you could have a floor plan that was photocopied 50 times, which are crucial here in New York, but
right.
We redraw everything. I mean, we have a very strict brand guideline and high standards I've had for years, and it's always been an edge because we're constantly selling in buildings where, hey, maybe the almost identical apartment downstairs or upstairs is on the market, and it's just a handful of things that can set you apart. So we just make sure we're covering all those things.
Oh, that's great. I mean, huge congratulations to you and to that company, because if there's a more competitive industry, I don't know what it is, right? I mean, I think if you can survive and excel, you're doing great. So let me do this. I did mention at the top that you're with the Serhant company. And obviously people watching this podcast are real estate people, I believe, for the most part.
Mhm.
Ryan Serhant has certainly developed a brand, and I'm sure people will be interested in how do you work with him and how do you work together, and kind of an inside look at working at that brokerage.
Yeah, I see and interact with Ryan every day. I'm working on several of his projects and listings. It's usually not long. He's very big on time blocking. So when I, schedule formal meetings with him, it's 15 to 30 minutes typically. It's direct to the point, but he's always available. We always make the joke that he has clones, because he can, kind of be in so many different places so efficiently. And, I think the one amazing thing about him when he first brought me in for an interview, I hadn't been considering Serhant. I'd been looking for a new company, but I hadn't been considering his company just because, I just associated with his old team, and it was more junior agents, and, it was a very different structure from what he has right now. But he brought me in, and I was very taken aback with his whole presentation. There's a lot of value, and he's just, when you meet him, he's real. He researches you. It's just not like a normal brokerage where they're like, tell me about yourself. He knows about you. He does his research ahead of time. I've been in the industry for 10 years. I had some interactions with him, not much. But he was very dialed in. When you sit down with him, he is making complete eye contact. He will have, on these initial meetings, I mean, it's a full hour, undivided attention. There's no phones involved. There's nothing else. It's presentation, and he's trying to figure out what you like to do in real estate, what kind of clients, price points, areas you like to work in. Because so he can set you up for success and ultimately build your personal brand, which is, also what he does for his Sell It Like Serhant clients. So it's pretty incredible how individually, motivated he is for each of us. I think that's something that would really surprise a lot of people working with him one-on-one.
Well, good. Listen, I think that anytime you can get media attention, you've done something different, right? And I think, to compliment him on starting out at as a member of a TV show and then becoming an icon in this business in very few years.
Yeah.
I think his book came out, and is the secret he gets up at 5? Is that the only thing that makes him different?
He gets up at 4.
4? Oh,
I text him I get up early too. I mean, I text him at like 4:30 and he responds. But
okay, so let me dial that back, because I was afraid to say 4 because it sounded crazy. So he actually is up at 4. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he's up around then for sure. Yeah, I wouldn't say that's a secret to success. I mean, There's no silver bullet to success in real estate. It's really about the silver buckshot.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of things he does right, but just kind of, he has a couple different like verticals within this brokerage. I wouldn't even really call it a brokerage. It's really a media company. It's his ventures and coursework. There's a lot of things that make it special, make it more profitable than a normal brokerage. But he's kind of sourced a lot of the best within his team and outside. So he has our internal team. We have very strong ventures group, Ivy League guys. We have, amazing digital marketers. We have, very, very smart people who are much more well educated on these sectors than Ryan is or I am. And then, he has some more top level people that aren't, I wouldn't say everyday employees, that have kind of helped him deliver his coursework and his branding and a lot of the things. And like, these are like really top level experts in, in marketing and brand building and things like that. So what he's delivering to his Sell It Like Serhant course clients and, his brokers and his company it was very expensive. I mean, there's a lot of smart people that helped him build what he's built, and it works. And I'm teaching a Sell It Like Serhant mentorship group, very advanced level. Most of our members are actually from Canada. And everything I see them doing is working, and they're all doing very advanced videos, social media campaigns. And I'm hearing success stories week after week in my mastermind groups. So Ryan's an amazing guy. And a lot of people have been on $1 million risk listing, but not a lot of people have really done what he's done. The reinvestment of his resources, I think, is what really sets him apart. A lot of people, will put it into a new development or, or a listing or, buy a cool car or, a bunch of property or, maybe even start building your own property. But he's put his resources, his time and focus into building out his social media brands and building out these verticals inside this company. And that's the difference between Ryan Serhant and everybody else in real estate.
Well, it's interesting. When I do these podcasts, I try, as a thank you to the people who come on, I try to, give them an opportunity to, talk about their career or their success and certainly the things that, they had to overcome. But I think in your case, just the fact that you are a mentor for Sell Like Serhant, that's my thank you to you. Because anybody watching this podcast knows that they can contact Sean McPeak, and good for you. So let me go into all about Sean McPeak, okay?
Okay, sure.
In your family background, were there entrepreneurs?
Almost everyone I'm related to is an entrepreneur.
Okay, so that was an easy. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll give you a little history. Actually, female entrepreneurs. My grandmother, who grew up on Long Island, her parents are from Ireland. She started a nursing home on Long Island in 1953 with my grandfather, and operated it until she died in 1996. So she was, my grandfather passed away in the 70s, but she operated for almost 20 years by herself. So she was a female entrepreneur. My mother's from Germany. Her mother was running hotels in Germany, in the 40s and 50s, after World War II. So, she was, pretty serious. She was a pretty serious woman running, businesses even back then, where in a country where they weren't very, well receiving of female entrepreneurs. And then my mother and father started a software company in the early 80s, and they sold it in, around year 2002. And then my father recently sold a company, it's another software company. My brother is a civil engineer. He owns his own civil engineering firm in New York. And, my uncle, my cousins, they own breweries and bars. So entrepreneurship is in my DNA, coming from both sides of my family tree.
Wow, what a great way to get started, knowing that that's a career option for you. Good for you. What about this? Why did you choose real estate?
I graduated college in 2009, when the job market kind of went flat here in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
I was working in IT and tech support for a software company, and I was working from home, and it was just making me very unhappy. And I would spend my lunch breaks searching for jobs. So Monster.com was kind of the main job engine back then, and that was before really LinkedIn or Indeed came on the scene. Mm-hmm. And then I ended up answering. I had flipped a few houses with my mother growing up, and I'd always thought about getting my license, and really, doing investment properties and flips is what my goal was eventually once I had capital. And I answered a Craigslist ad in New York City. I went to Wall Street, and they loved me, and I started doing rentals on Wall Street in November 2009. So that's kind of how I got into real estate. I kind of backed in a little bit, but there's an entrepreneurial element to it, and I learned a lot. And I started watching $1 Million Listing and HGTV, selling New York, and I sort of just started putting everything together.
Well, good for you. I mean, there's so many ways to get into real estate, and people that you would talk to and I would talk to always have fascinating backgrounds. I mean, the entrepreneurial one is the one that when I ask the question, because the people I interview are generally, almost all very successful, I don't think you can do that unless you're entrepreneurial, because you got to find a way to overcome all the horrible things that happen when you're your own boss as opposed to an employee. And you also get to enjoy all the wins when you're your own boss. So, it's a pretty good background to become a real estate agent, I think. But let me ask you this one. And you've had a lot of people who could have influenced you in your family, and I suppose in your business. But if you had to pick one, who would be your biggest influence?
I would say my father is my biggest influence. He wasn't really sold on me being a real estate agent in New York. He did recognize there were high property values and hence high commissions, but he wanted me to do something more in the tech space or enterprise kind of selling solution space like he did.
Hmm.
But yeah, he's influenced me tremendously. He's still influencing me and pushing me. Um, and yeah, I'd say he's my biggest influence
Okay.
business wise.
Okay. Well, it sounds like he's done well. I mean, you've done okay with his pushing.
Yeah, yeah. Doing this job, mediocrity is my mortal enemy.
Uh-huh.
I couldn't just be a typical real estate person. I have to, go as far as possible. I really want to be in like the Ryan Serhant, Frederick Eklund kind of sphere. That to me is the only way to be successful, is to just to be absolutely outstanding and one of a kind. And I've done it bit by bit, not as meteoric as Mr. Serhant, but I'm inching my way up, and I'm drafting on him now. So
Well, you know what?
yeah,
It's probably you'll pick up so much by just being around that company that it won't be as hard as trying to invent the way, right? Like, good for you.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the energy in the house is electric. Everybody who works for him is just a great person. Number one, I mean, he really hires for culture, for people he likes and who he wants to see succeed. And then there's really no weak links in that chain. I mean, a lot of companies you go to, you have, someone here, someone there who doesn't like to do their job or, might be unhappy, but everyone is super upbeat. Everyone's in there early and they're usually leaving after 7 or 8 o'clock at night. It's a very startup type of atmosphere. People it's a little bit on the younger side, but everyone has, 6, 7, 10 years of experience, even if they're in their early 30s. So it's a pretty inspiring place to work.
Well, good. What about this? There, people have various things that are important to their success. Sean, in your life, how would you rank these things? Luck, hard work, or tenacity in your success?
I'd say tenacity, maybe, and tie for hard work and luck. I mean, last year I think illustrated that there is a lot of luck involved. During 2020 lockdowns, I did quite well with deals before the pandemic really hit, and I kind of had a little bit of foresight in January and February about what was about to happen. So I really hustled to get a lot of things in contract. But that being said, a lot of things went quiet no matter what I did in July and June. It was pretty much, we were almost at zero in terms of deal flow.
Mm-hmm.
So that really highlighted how lucky I was. I always knew I was lucky. There's a lot of volume in this city. There's a lot of wealth coming in. If prices drop, there's always a foreigner ready to come in and fill the void. Usually, I mean, we've had Russian waves, Chinese, Indian. There's always someone who's a country that's having a boom while we're having a bust, or vice versa. So I did realize that a lot of it is due to luck, but being in the right place at the right time has a lot to do with hard work and tenacity too.
Yeah, no, I think the reason I ask those questions it's just the order. I mean, you have to have all of them to be successful. So it's kind of the order.
Mm-hmm.
But in your career, because nobody gets there, easily. What are the challenges that you had to overcome to get to where you are now?
In my career, I've had to deal with some team leaders that were kind of taking advantage of my time, who may have not paid me the commissions I was owed necessarily, and took advantage of me when I was like weaker financially. I think that was probably the biggest hits I'd taken. Not really understanding human psychology. In New York, people aren't just motivated by moving or money. Sometimes they need to feel like they're, the master of the universe. And that's something I didn't understand for, probably like the first half of my career, is that you can be manipulated by people for things other than money and, and moving and convenience and normal things I think in other markets um, don't apply here sometimes. So yeah, I mean, just kind of getting shocked by people's motivations has been definitely an obstacle for me. And I'll tell you another story about kind of failure. I started a restaurant here after Hurricane Sandy hit and flooded out a bunch of New York City. And I started a sports bar, and we had all different types of hurdles to get started. We had water in our pipes, we had in our gas lines, we had, our state liquor authority was very hard to deal with. Our community board was very against us. We never got a liquor license for the sports bar, and I ended up, having to sell it after about a year and a half. But that was kind of like my big failure in New York City, I would say, outside of real estate.
Mm-hmm. But you don't learn as much from success as failure. It's always my thinking. I mean, surviving failure is the real lesson.
Yeah, I mean, chaos breeds opportunity. That's
Mm-hmm.
always been my motto. I, in the moment it's painful, but I always just kind of look further down the road for, for for sunnier weather. Yeah, I mean, especially in New York and real estate and sales in general, there's a lot of rejection. It's very emotionally taxing if you're a sensitive person, and a lot of it is just keeping your antennas up. Just getting out of bed consistently on time, and making your calls, touching your people, no matter what mood you're in, no matter how big the deal was. Don't get sick and stay in bed or lay on the couch or something. You got to get up and just at least get into the office or get to your computer at a reasonable time, and just let it roll off your back like water off a duck's back.
Absolutely. I mean, particularly people learned that. Some excelled and some failed, I think, in the pandemic because there was nobody telling them to do that, right?
Right.
And the self-starters just, they did well because it didn't stop them. They kept working at it, right? And
Yeah.
this is something that most agents, have to kind of deal with in different ways. But in your career or with your clients or your career, how important is loyalty?
I think it's very important. I don't think you should automatically assume that everyone's going to be loyal to you. Loyalty is earned. And sometimes people go with a different agent after you've done several years of work for them, maybe managed a property for them or done some extra work in order to earn that sales listing. They go elsewhere, and it's not the end of the world. And you should never give up until it's over, even if it's listed with another agent or, you look like you're about to lose a deal. Always just, send one more text, send one more email, one more phone call might be the difference, between a deal and not a deal. I've signed several large deals on the last day of exclusives. So I'm always just going to give it one more shot before it's officially done.
When I was selling, I used to keep this in mind that it's not over until the agent gives up.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Right.
My friend's a lacrosse coach, and he tells his kids play through the echo of the whistle. I like that. And yeah, which is kind of funny. I mean, it could result in an injury or two, but I always felt like in sports, I mean, stopping at the whistle may have hurt me because maybe you thought you heard a whistle, or maybe the ref interpreted the whistle at different times you did.
Yeah.
So he says to his players, play until I tell you to stop playing, not until the ref tells you, like until the whistle. So,
Okay.
I think there's some merit to that. Just doing a little extra, don't look back before you're going to hit the finish line. Just kind of hit the gas and just really power through.
Yeah, great advice. I mean, it's life is won by those that do things differently, right? It's different ways of saying it, but
Yeah.
essentially that's it. How about this? And of
Sure.
course, we don't here in Toronto because of the pandemic. There has been very little meeting people face to face. During the last year, and I'm not sure
Right.
if New York. I think New York has gone through a variety of stages of that. But what sets off your BS alarm when you meet somebody?
Several things. I mean, their energy. If they're a little frantic, if they're pushy. When I speak to people, or if I'm doing a negotiation, or if someone's pitching me, sometimes let them fill the quietness void. maybe soften your voice and see how they react. If they can't hear you properly, sometimes you just get a lot off somebody like that. My BS alarm is very sensitive. It used to not be so sensitive. I had to get, kind of scammed a few times. It happens quite a bit in New York, as you can probably imagine. But the BS alarm gets tripped up by several different things. It's specific to the person I'm dealing with typically.
Okay. We're going back and forth on how to be successful, and it involves making mistakes and finding a way to survive them. So how about what's the biggest mistake you ever made? And the reason I ask that, tell us so that the audience can avoid making the same mistake.
Biggest mistake in real estate?
Or anywhere, or in life. Could be real estate or life.
I moved in with a girlfriend like 5 or 6 years ago. That was a tremendous mistake. But kind of a Band-Aid for a relationship. I got to say, man, that haunted me a long time.
Sean,
if you're in a relationship and you need to do something, don't have a baby or get married because you think you're going to lose them. Just, let it play out.
Okay. So I'm assuming you're not going to send her a copy of this podcast.
I don't think she watches many podcasts,
Okay.
but she is in real estate.
All
so
right.
Who knows?
Okay, now we're getting towards the end because I know you're busy. So let me ask this one, and this is really one of my favorites. What's the best thing that people who work with you and know you can say about you?
The best thing they can say about me?
Yes.
Wow, that's a good question. I think that just I'm a good listener and I'm honest. I'm kind of no BS type of person. I like to give people the truth gently, but directly. I'm just not a liar. I'd rather, bring, be known for my integrity and my honesty than anything.
Perfect. Really the best answer. What are the top 2 things that you care about and the top 2 things you don't care about?
Top 2 things I care about. I care about the, overall state of society. Mm-hmm. Right now I wish, we can make people happier. I just, try to put out positive energy on the internet and elsewhere. I wasn't so positive last year. I was feeling pretty down, but those are things I care about. I care about, people's like financial kind of health, across the United States, especially in inner cities. We're going to be doing a video series about, helping people fight off bad appraisals and predatory real estate practices in the inner city. Jordan March and myself, my partner. So that's really important to us, is just kind of helping society from a systemic perspective, financially speaking, and real estate wise.
Okay.
So just really helping people build wealth. And, people get a stimulus. If people get something, some large payment or something, we want to help them grow it and hold on to it and not just blow it. And then things I don't really care about. That's a hard one. It's hard. I don't care about who the president of the United States is anymore.
Okay.
We've heard about that nonstop, and
Right.
There's, a lot of people in real estate that like to talk about it, but it doesn't really affect what we do.
Right.
So I'm glad that election's over. I don't want to hear about it anymore. I don't really want to discuss anyone's opinions or hear about it. And thankfully, we don't really hear much about it these days. So I would say just federal elections is something I do not care about.
All right. I'll give you an amen on that one. I mean, even in Canada, everyone was glued to the TV until it was over. So, and now it's passed.
I know.
Listen, I know you're busy, so I'm going to ask you my last question, okay? If you could, what would you tell your 19-year-old self?
Buy Apple.
Okay. Perfect answer. Listen, Sean, I really appreciate your time. I'd love to have you back. Love to have you back in the future as well, see how your career is going. But in the meantime, thanks for joining us. Continued success in your career, and stay well.
You too. And I loved your intro podcast, and I was checking out your other ones before I came on. This is wonderful. Thanks for having me. I'd love to have you on my podcast, Raving About Real Estate. We're restarting that in a couple of weeks. We just kind of filmed a couple episodes. So we'll have to have you on to spread the knowledge. So I really appreciate you having me.
Listen, love to be a part of that. So I look forward to hearing from you. And listen, it's been fun. And we'll see you in Clubhouse.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We'll be on there, or I'll hear you in Clubhouse.
Okay, right. Thanks, Sean. Have a good weekend. Thank you.
You too.
Okay, bye-bye. We'd like to thank Sean McPeak and you for joining us today. And if you enjoyed our podcast, please like, comment, and subscribe on your favorite podcast network or on our YouTube channel. And please tell your friends about us. And if you want to reach us directly, you can do that either by email, info@rewithhd.com, or on our website, rewithhd.com. Thank you and see you next time.